It is episode number 34 of the Gashouse Gang, presented by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Welcome in, everybody. Alongside of Bernie Miklasz, I'm Matt Pauley. Happy Friday before Christmas. Thanks so much for being tuned in. Bernie, great to see you as always. Merry few days ahead of Christmas.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell you what, Mrs. Bernie, my wife's mate, she's got something in the crock pot downstairs that just the wonderful scent reminds me of like holiday season. I can't wait to get into that later, whatever it is.
There's something about, because my wife is an amazing cook. There's something about when they do stuff in the crock pot, when you walk in the door after being, and all of a sudden it just hits you and you know it's going to be a good night.
It's enough to put you in a really good mood. If you, I think we're all, generally speaking, in pretty good moods most of the time, but it's enough to elevate your mood. Let's just say that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got a few things to get to as always. Folks who are watching, feel free to comment and we can address those comments as we go along. For those of you who are not subscribed to our YouTube channel, encourage you to do that at KMOX Sports. Also encourage you to subscribe to Bernie's YouTube channel at The Bernie Show. He's producing 1 to 2 in-depth videos on an everyday basis going into the stuff that we're talking about in St. Louis sports, and you'll definitely enjoy that. And Bernie, it's been the overwhelming narrative in St. Louis sports now going back to the Monday of the winter meetings. What's going to happen with Nolan Arenado? We've discussed a lot of the fact that he did not accept the trade to the Houston Astros. Now it looks like the Astros, there's a report out there that they are in on Christian Walker. So if that happens, it would keep Paredes over at third, and there really wouldn't be a spot for Arenado. I don't know. It's just it's another day, and really no answers on where Arenado might end up.
Yeah, I don't know how to interpret this. I mean, I interpret it. The first part is like it sounds like Houston's moving on, but I can't be entirely sure of that. It depends on what Christian Walker wants, but it makes sense. He's really good.
Mm-hmm.
And Paredes is a natural third baseman. He could have played first. Maybe the Astros are just tired of dealing with Arenado and his agent. Not that they're doing anything wrong, as we've all said many times. Arenado has the right to choose to take a trade or not. It's in his contract. The team agreed to it. I never would criticize him for rejecting a trade. We can wonder why he would reject a certain trade. It's okay to wonder why, because I think Houston would have been a really good fit for him. But I just think the Astros are moving on. They want to get their club set. And Matt, I'll throw the question back to you. Okay, what's next? How do we prognosticate where Arenado winds up, or at least what teams are going to make the run for him? Do we have to wait until Alex Bregman signs as a free agent? Is it pretty much come down to that, and then the rest of it kicks in?
Well, I would argue that this situation actually is a really bad thing for the Cardinals, specifically what's happening in Houston, because you want third baseman to come off the board to open up opportunities for so there's, if we're playing musical chairs, that there's a team left over. Well, what just essentially happened is a chair was just pushed in. A chair was pulled out because you've got a first baseman essentially taking a third baseman spot because Paredes now goes over to third. So that's one less spot that Arenado makes sense for without a third baseman actually going off the board. And if you're on the Cardinals and you want multiple teams to be interested in Arenado, that's not great. And we'll see. The Yankees are still out there. The Phillies are still out there. The Red Sox are still out there. It's going to get worked out, I think, at some point in time. But this is not what this isn't how they wanted it to play out.
Yeah, and the team, the teams that are in on Bregman include among a couple that you mentioned there. Toronto's in on him. Detroit's in on him. Detroit has a special appeal, I think, because they're probably willing to pay what he wants. And also his former manager is there, AJ Hinch. And the Tigers are an up-and-coming team. They got a pretty good future. So I have a hard time, trying to figure out how exactly this will play out. I do believe, and I've had a chance to talk to Derek Gould last night about this. We were doing a charity fundraiser live stream with our friends at Dealing the Cards. And Derek strongly believes that Arenado will still be traded. He just, and I feel the same way. I don't see how bringing him back helps anybody, and I'm starting to get some pushback on that. Just FYI from some fans, and I pay attention to what fans say, and some of the viewers on my YouTube channel, they're strongly in favor of trading Arenado, and agree that he for the Cardinals' plan in 2025 to work, he's got to go. But I don't know about you, but I have been getting some pushback on this. It's like, well, Arenado will be fired up, and they'll get a lot out of him because he'll want to reestablish himself in St. Louis, and he has a lot to play. I sort of get the theory, but I'm not buying it. I get why someone would say that. I just don't think it's good for the morale of the team, number one. And, it puts Ali Marmol in a tough spot because I think it's pretty obvious that the Cardinals want to play Nolan Gorman at third, maybe Sajaci in there too. Sajaci playing second if Gorman's at third. How does this work if Arenado's here? And I've said on my video, the Cardinals do have some leverage because he has the no trade card. They have the lineup card. They can play whoever they want. But that's easy for me to say, is like just to be a big mouth. It's easy to say. But asking a manager to do it is like basically keep Arenado on the bench for, half the games or whatever. That's a tough situation. I don't see how that benefits anybody.
Yeah. And Bernie, I like to speak in realities. And I think the reality of the situation is that he's going to get traded. But let's go to a scenario where they aren't able to move him. And let's go to another reality. I was in the room with John Mozeliak when he said that they were going to trade, they intended to trade Nolan Arenado. And at one point, and this didn't get a whole lot of play because the main topic was actually trading him, but at one point in that conversation, Mo said, you know what, there's another way to do this. And he was talking specifically about dropping payroll. So they are going to drop payroll no matter what. That is the reality of the situation. The easiest way to do it is to trade Nolan Arenado and try to get out from as much of his contract as possible. But for the people who push back and want to see Arenado stick around, I think most of those people are pushing back because they want to see the team win this upcoming season. If you don't trade Nolan Arenado, you have to trade Steven Matz. You have to trade Eric Fetty. You have to trade Ryan Helsley. There might be some other players in there as well. And we've talked about a lot of those guys are going to get traded. Probably it might make sense to trade those guys anyways. But when we compare, take Matz out of the consideration, when we compare Group A and Group B, if the cost of keeping Arenado is losing the other players, those players are a lot more important to helping you win baseball games than the other. So the people who want Arenado to stick around, the implications of that isn't that the team will be better this upcoming season. I would contend the implications are they are forced to drop payroll in other ways, losing players that can be more impactful.
I think you're absolutely right. And that's a great point to reinforce, make and reinforce over and over again. Because again, some of the feedback I've gotten is like, well, look, they ought to just keep Arenado, and then they have other really good players. Maybe you add sort of the bullpen, and you got a chance to win. I just think that's unrealistic, and you just laid it out. Not to parrot what you said, but what you said is exactly right. It's not as simple as Arenado coming home, so to speak, and playing third base, because there'll be a cause and an effect, and that means couple other guys will have to go. It's really hard for fans to not to understand it. I'm sorry, I apologize. That's wrong. They understand it. It's hard for some fans to accept it, that this season is not exactly a throwaway, but it's a step back and there's a different priority. I'm okay with what they're doing because it's long overdue. But it is interesting too, because I have talked about this a lot. I mean, this play the kids thing started last year, where the Cardinals position players age 25 and younger led the majors in games played and at bats. So it's not like they really didn't go down this road last year, because they did, very much so. They're just trying to go further down the road now and open up third base for Gorman. That's the one problem. Even if Arenado comes in or he stays, and they do trade, let's just say they trade Fetty, they find a taker for Matz, maybe they trade Helsley. That you're right. Number one, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden because you keep Arenado, you're going to win, because they're going to be moving people out. Number two, it still doesn't solve a problem, which is the Cardinals clearly want Nolan Gorman to have a full opportunity at third base. That's not going to happen with Arenado in the house unless they want to get real radical and just say, well, welcome back, but we're going to play Nolan Gorman a lot. So it's a mess. I mean, it's really a mess. Yeah. Now Arenado clearly has leverage. The Cardinals have leverage if they want to use it. I don't think they want to use it and play hardball with Arenado and basically tell him, okay, you can say no to this next trade proposal, but we really are committed to playing Gorman at third base, and that makes us it makes it easier for us to look at Sajaci at second base for a long time. So, do you really want to be a part-time player in St. Louis? Do you really want to play 70, 80 games and be a pinch hitter and a defensive replacement? I don't know. I don't think they'll go there, but they could.
It's the Gashouse Gang. We are presented by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Bernie, talk to us a little bit about our good friends at Saliga, who are just a great supporter of this show and a lot of stuff we do on KMOX.
Yeah, appreciate it. Always happy to. A day like this, man, cold and windy in St. Louis. I tell you what, in my home office right now, I am as warm and snug as could be. In fact, I'm so comfortable because of this heat that Saliga keeps making sure that it's running great in all parts of our house. So we have a big old Victorian house. I may actually fall asleep during this. So Matt, if I do, talk real loud, and maybe I'll hear it. No, I'm so comfortable right now. Anyway, Saliga Heating and Cooling, and all my kidding aside about that, this proud independent American standard heating and air conditioning dealer, they give you comfort, man. They give you comfort, making sure you're nice and warm in the winter, making sure you're nice and cool in the summer. And that's why you should become a member of the Priority Club program, which has some extra perks, but it's a maintenance program. And they always come to your home like twice a year to make sure your air conditioning is ready to go for the hot stuff. Your heating is ready to go for the real cold stuff. And it gives you peace of mind. It also can save you some money because they can catch a little thing before it becomes a big thing and take care of the fix quick and easy and cheap. So a big believer in them. They've been around since 1927. The same family, entered and serviced generations of St. Louis families. And I can testify to their professionalism, their class, their integrity, and their dependability. So, and they also have that American standard heating and air conditioning equipment. So if you want to find out everything they do at Saliga as far as services and find out more about the Priority Club, go to SaligaHeatingandCooling.com, SaligaHeatingandCooling.com, and financing options are available subject to credit approval. Thank you.
You're watching, you maybe be listening to the Gashouse Gang presented by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The other thing I wanted to get into on Arenado, and I just wonder, and this is, I know, Bernie, that Mo goes into this situation and there's something that they'd like to get back for Nolan. There's a certain amount of money that they would like to get out from under. The report on that Houston deal, if it would have moved forward, was about $20 million was going to be just eaten by the Cardinals, and the rest of the contract was going to go to the Astros. That seems fine. I don't have a problem with that number, but I do wonder, for all the reason we've talked about, that you just got to find a way to get a deal done at some point in the relatively near future. If you're John Mozeliak and the Cardinals, do you just have to sit here and say, you know what, we're going to have to eat more of this contract? The return for Arenado is going to be almost nothing. Like, just accept the fact that it's not going to be what you want, but the value is moving on from a guy that you want to move on from right now?
Yeah, my attitude about this is all along is they never really were going to get much for him. And, and I hate to be a jerk by saying this, but anybody who still thinks that they could get a not even a significant return, but a decent return, a positive return where you say, oh, well, that's better than I thought. I think a lot of people still think that's possible. I don't think it is. I hope I'm wrong. We just talked about why they have a log jam and they have a really tough situation if he comes back They have a tough situation on a lot of different fronts. And so to me, getting him out of here, no matter how much money you have to eat, makes sense. I don't think they'd have to eat all of it, but if they had to eat more than what they were willing to give Houston, which was quite a bit, there's nothing wrong with that either. It just depends really on how hard they really want to move on from Nolan Arenado. And they're probably frustrated. They'll never say it because, again, he has the no trade clause. They agreed to it, but it's got to be a frustrating time. I think the Cardinals would like to get on with the rest of their offseason and maybe even just be able to enjoy the holidays a little bit without this hanging over their head. You want mistletoe over your head, not Nolan Arenado hanging over your head.
I don't think this thing gets done in the next few days. I think Nolan Arenado is a Cardinal on January 1st.
Do you think, I asked Eric Gould this last night, and I think it's a fun question if I could throw this in to see what you think. All right, we have a general list of teams that we think could be in play for Arenado, even if we take Houston out. There's still several teams that loom as potential fits. Is there a team out there who the name of this team really hasn't been circulated at all? If they have, it has been just a little bit. Is there a team that could come out of the blue and emerge as a surprising factor for Arenado? Derek Gould mentioned Seattle. And yes, Seattle would be kind of out of the blue, but they have been mentioned a little bit because everyone knows they need a third baseman. I don't know. What do you think? Does anything come to mind? And not to put you on the spot because it's not an easy question to answer.
No, it's an interesting question for sure. The first thought I go to, Bernie, is what small market teams that expect to win could jump in if the price tag gets to a point where the Cardinals are taking so much that all of a sudden it becomes something that that they could move forward with. But then at the same time, Arenado would have to accept that trade. Do the Twins, if they barely have to pay, they could use somebody at third base. That's a team that I could think of that maybe might be in a little bit of contention this year. It's not going to happen inside of the division, that's for sure. It's a really interesting question. I think it's a great question. I just I don't know. I'm just thinking through the third base situations for a bunch of different teams. Washington Nationals, if they think they can maybe, I've heard some people say that the Nationals think that maybe they can compete this year. Am I missing anybody here?
Well, the only one thought I had, and this is just me shopping for teams that need a third baseman across the state. The Kansas City Royals are pretty good, and they're in the playoffs. I think they'll be even better this year. They really don't have a third baseman that moves the needle for anybody. I looked at roster resource. Their starting third baseman as of right now is Mikael Garcia. I'm probably mispronouncing his first name, but everybody knows who he is. I mean, hit 231, slugged 332 last year. They could use him, but I don't know. That sounds like a veto by Arenado, but who knows? Who knows?
I think like
they're pretty aggressive. Their owner wants to spend money. Their GM goes out and makes things happen, just like the Jonathan India trade. Getting him from for the Reds, giving up a starting pitcher. So I would just to play the parlor game here. I would mention them as a real long shot candidate.
Yeah, I don't, and maybe if Arenado likes playing in St. Louis, that there's some similarities, and it's just down the road in Kansas City, and that's a winning baseball club. Those are good fans. I went to college in the state of Kansas, and so many of my best friends from college are Royals fans, and I would make that 2-hour drive from Manhattan, Kansas to Kansas City all the time to go to Royals games. Like that's an underrated baseball market, and that's a good place to play.
Absolutely. So we'll see what happens, man. It's an interesting situation. It gives us stuff to talk about. I've been doing a lot of videos on this situation. I'm kind of burning out on it a little bit, although it's still obviously something very much in the news and very much something to talk about. But
yeah, Zodiac commented on that and basically asked about the Kansas City situation himself. So it's a fit if he would go there. I'm just not convinced he would end up being comfortable.
That's right.
There.
That's right.
Yeah. This is the Gashouse Gang. We are presented by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Bernie, sometimes I just get irrationally annoyed by things. And yesterday, what happened?
You're my kind of guy, Matt.
There you go. I try to not. I get mad at myself because I go, Matt, why? You don't need to be upset about this. Why are you upset about this? I got really upset yesterday with the news that came down. Not so much the news, but the way it was handled in Chicago with Sammy Sosa being brought back into the fold with the Cubs. And the Cubs said for him to come back into the fold, he has to apologize. So he puts together this crap apology where he doesn't actually admit to anything and says he never broke any laws. So actually, I've got the apology. I woke up yesterday morning not caring what Sammy Sosa did from a PED standpoint. Now I'm like, well, if it wasn't illegal, was he? But were we at a point yet with HGH at that point in time? I don't think so. Was it because he bought a steroid in another country where it wasn't illegal? Like all these questions started popping up in my mind. That's secondary though to who do the Cubs think that they are, that they feel like we need Sammy Sosa to give this apology. If they're going to require apology from Sosa, then they should start refunding people's money for all the money that Sosa brought into the organization. And oh yeah, by the way, speaking of money, now that he's apologized, he's going to show up at their convention and he's going to make them even more money. Everything about this situation for me, maybe you disagree, yells hypocrisy.
Well, absolutely. And really hypocrisy was a very overriding reality in the entire so-called steroids era. I covered the McGwire-Sosa race, from about the start of June on every single day. I've never had a situation where I was basically writing about the same person for like 3 months, 4 months straight, Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. And I just love how, first of all, everybody kind of had a sense of what was up with that, right? That there were some pharmaceuticals involved, whether they were legal or not. It in a way, it really didn't matter because some of the stuff that they used were readily available and were not illegal to buy. But we all knew that there was some pharmaceutical help. We assumed that. But everyone liked to look the other way. Everyone wanted to enjoy the show. That includes Sammy Sosa. That's the only reason I'm bringing McGwire into this. They saved baseball. They brought the Cal Ripken thing with Lou Gehrig and then Sosa McGwire. It brought baseball back from the damage it caused itself in 1994, not having a postseason. This is great for the game. This is unbelievable. The fans can't get enough. Boy, look at what they've done for baseball. And then all of a sudden, when it became fashionable to play church lady, like Dana Carvey on Saturday Night Live, all of a sudden everyone found religion and everyone was on the high moral ground. The same people that thought it was just a great show. It's so great for baseball, and everybody got all snooty and they pretended that they weren't sitting there enjoying every minute of it. I don't play that game. If you got to be consistent with it. You got to be consistent with understanding that there's always been this kind of stuff in baseball. Players way back when, I mean, they're gulping amphetamines left and right. And you can't tell me that amphetamines, all of those amphetamines that they were gulping were above board, They weren't taking amphetamines because it's like, well, I get tired of drinking coffee. They were taking amphetamines, which I've had players tell me, players from the steroids era said, listen, if they ever take amphetamines away, I'm in trouble. It's a long season and I'm exhausted. I can deal with them taking away steroids. Amphetamines, no. And my point is that, people can get persnickety and try to justify, well, there's a difference between amphetamines and steroids, and there's not. They both were and are, performance enhancing drugs. But no, people don't want to think about some of our heroes from way back when, and I'm not going to mention any names because that wouldn't be fair to them. But all of the players that are on hallowed ground that we look up to as if they're baseball gods, they were gulping amphetamines. I hate to be that kind of person, but they were. So the whole hypocrisy of baseball is just ridiculous. It continues to be. And The only reason I sort of ventured off into an overview is because you nailed the Cubs. I don't have anything else to add to that. They ought to apologize. The Ricketts family ought to apologize to their fans, because Cubs fans support the team. They love their team. They fill the place up. They spend money. And the Ricketts family has the financial firepower to do whatever they want to do as far as building a perfect baseball team. Mm-hmm. They could blow the Brewers and even the Cardinals out of the water anytime the Ricketts family said, yeah, let's just absolutely go for it. And let's spend money, and let's just, hey, we don't care if we get into, the competitive balance tax luxury hell, right? But they don't do it. They hold back in their spending. They hold back when they had a chance. We have a chance to get really, really good. And how do the Chicago Cubs, with their financial resources, get their tails kicked by the Milwaukee Brewers all this time? How have the Brewers been why? How can they in good conscience say to their fans they're trying to win when the Brewers dominate them, the smallest market in the major leagues? So the hypocrisy with the Ricketts family is, to me, just as bad as anything Sammy Sosa may have done. But you're right. They're bringing him back now because they just want to see, oh, well, he could bringing him back. The fans want him. That means cha-ching. That's money. That's what this is all about. It has nothing to do with morality.
The statement that was released by Ricketts, I'll read it. It said, we appreciate Sammy releasing his statement and for reaching out. No one played harder or wanted to win more. Nobody's perfect, but we never doubted his passion for the game and the Cubs. It's an understatement to say that Sammy is a fan favorite. Why is that true today and it wasn't true 2 days ago or 3 days ago? I'm trying to get the right words here, because there's this arrogance. There's this feeling of I'm the king of the world from the Ricketts, that they feel like they can tell Sammy Sosa, you're not welcome here. If we're going to force you to issue an apology, we're going to embarrass you. We're going to control the situation. And there's just something about that, Bernie, that really bothers me.
It should, because everybody in Chicago knew what was going on. Nobody would speak about it too loudly, but everybody knew. And so, once Sosa was no longer of use to them financially, then the people that run the clubs and own the Cubs, that's when they found morality, So I don't need that. Get it out. I don't need it.
By the way, I have no problem saying, as somebody who loves baseball and I did not like where the game of baseball was coming off the strike year, from a greater good perspective for the game of baseball, even though we know what we know about McGwire and Sosa now, from a greater good perspective, baseball still is healthier today than it would have been without that happening.
Matt, I would go, with Rick Hummel to every National League town, and even a couple interleague stops, and places where they weren't drawing flies. Like I'd go to Miami. We went to Miami. There was a series there in the old ballpark, and there's people, 2-3 hours before the game, just lining up to get in to watch batting practice. I mean, thousands of people, and they're in the upper deck at that ballpark where the Dolphins still play. The upper deck where they never sold a ticket all season. All of a sudden, 3/4 of the upper deck was packed. You go to Pittsburgh, and it was almost like what it must have been to see the Beatles, getting ready for them to do a concert or something. I mean, I'll just never forget a scene in Pittsburgh, just people 4 or 5 hours trying to get a good place in line so they could get down close to batting practice, and just that ballpark filled at a time where the Pirates were just a horrendous team. Their PED use was a PED for Major League Baseball, which 100%. Needed a boost, which needed to get stronger, which needed to give the fans a reason to like them again. They had no problem with those guys using performance enhancing drugs, because they too were a performance enhancing drug for the game of baseball. You're absolutely right.
It is the
Absolutely.
Gashouse game. We're presented by Saliga Heating and Cooling. A couple of quick housekeeping items for you. First off, it is being reported officially now as we are live at 12:32 p.m. here in the afternoon on Friday. Christian Walker goes to the Astros, so that goes back to our first bit of conversation where that seemingly would put Nolan Arenado out of the running in Houston. Well, crazier things have happened, but that seemingly does that.
Yeah,
Also, Bernie,
sure.
you and I, 26th and 27th of December, we're going to be filling in for the Dave Glover show on KMOX, you and me, for a few hours. It's going to be a lot of fun.
You're probably going to get sick of me after those 2 days. 8
No,
hours
it'll be good.
of you and I together. No, I'm looking forward to it. It'll be great to get down in the studio. I think I'm also doing the same deal on the 30th with, I believe, Kevin Wheeler. So
Yeah.
I appreciate the opportunity to be a co-host and hang out with people that I like and respect very much, and also just to do whatever I can to help KMOX.
Well, speaking of that, can you tell us a little bit about our friends over at Saliga?
Absolutely. Saliga Heating and Cooling, we've been a family, calling them a client, a customer, whatever you want to call us, for 16 years now. And the reason I'm telling you that is, like, it isn't just me telling you about a business that's good when I'm not someone that has been a regular customer of the business, but we have firsthand knowledge about how great Saliga Heating and Cooling is. And that's why I'm always proud to represent them. This independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer has been around since 1927, and all these generations, St. Louis families have been used to calling them, and St. Louis families, younger families, are calling them, and they're getting, every year they grow even more. And I've always said, and I really mean this, if you think about that, the same families continuously own Saliga Heating and Cooling since 1927, and it grows every year. You realize how great you have to be at your business, running it, and great to your customers, to have a reputation that travels through almost 100 years, and you're still having new people call you to come to their homes and to deal with a problem. I mean, sometimes I feel that's all I need to say when I talk about how great Saliga Heating and Cooling is. I mean, is that not a credibility test that they've passed with flying colors? And do you think if they were shady in any way, anything less than 100% honest, do you think that they would still be going strong nearly 100 years later, the same family? No. They've earned their rep, and they've earned our business, and I think that you would be pleased if you haven't called them yet next time you need something. And you also get that American Standard equipment, which is the best in the business. They are in that maintenance program. We're in that. It's called the Priority Club. Check that out online. Also, there's financing options available, subject to credit approval. For all the details, including the phone number, go to SaligaHeatingCooling.com. That's SaligaHeatingandCooling.com. And I know Dan Saliga will take great care of you.
The Gashouse gang is starting to wrap things up here on this Friday edition. But before we get out of here, Bernie, college football playoff action begins tonight. Indiana, Notre Dame, 3 games tomorrow. SMU, Penn State, Clemson, Texas, Tennessee, Ohio State. The point spreads on all these games are at least a touchdown or larger. That Tennessee Ohio State game really intrigues me. That's the one. I think I would not be shocked to see Tennessee walk into Columbus and win that game. I'm excited for the college football playoff. I don't know if I'm super excited for any of these individual games.
I'm looking forward to all of them. And I think there's some really intriguing matchups. And one of the reasons I think there's intriguing is because I always pay attention to what people are investing in, and especially like the sharp gamblers who are really good at this. I like to monitor that kind of activity. And I've been surprised, there's so much movement toward Clemson, which is a 12-point underdog at Texas. It makes that game more intriguing to me because I'm like, well, really, I continue to be fascinated by, the fact that Ohio State, has been just kind of like ruled out, so to speak, because that stench of that Michigan loss still hangs in the air. And I think people are underestimating the Buckeyes. SMU and Penn State is the one game that could be really, really interesting. I don't know how to read it. I just think when you look at who SMU lost to this year, for all the problems we have with James Franklin and people like, the fact they lose so many big games, SMU is going to be punching above their weight especially at Penn State. That's going to be a tough one for them. But then you have the decision. Are we talking about who's going to win outright or who's going to cover the spread? So there's two different ways to do about it. I would think Penn State will win that game because, again, not that their schedule has been fantastic, but it's been better than SMU's. And, when you look at SMU, for example, during the season, in the ACC, they never had to play Miami, Clemson, Syracuse, or Georgia Tech in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
And they did lose to Clemson in the championship, but I don't know about that. But if just a couple other thoughts. I think the recency bias is figuring in a lot of people's, and I understand it because I thought about it hard too about Ohio State and just the way they've been shamed for what happened and the assumption that it's an unmotivated team or maybe a broken-hearted team. I don't know. Here's what I know, and I looked up one little thing. If we're talking about, here's the key: Tennessee on the road. And Tennessee this year in their road games, their tough road games in the SEC, Georgia, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. Two of those teams went 6-6. Mm-hmm. Tennessee went 1-2. They averaged 18 points per game. And their true redshirt freshman quarterback wasn't very good. And Ohio State's got one of the best pass defenses in the nation. And that pass defense had nothing to do with why they lost to Michigan. So I don't trust Tennessee on the road. I mean, there's enough reasons to feel that way. I just don't trust them. Now, can they keep it tight? They can keep it tight, but I think Ohio State's going to win the game. I probably would bet, if I did bet, Ohio State on the money line, which throws out the point spread. Notre Dame, I also like, real quick, I don't want to go too long. You tell me when to shut up. I also like Texas to win. I'd go money line there. Maybe Clemson covers. They're feisty. I don't completely trust Quinn Ewers in a big spot, except he has had 2 weeks off, and I think that'll help the issues that he's been dealing with physically, because he clearly has not been 100% physically. But when Texas has had multiple weeks off this year, coming out of those multiple weeks off, 52 points, 34 points, 49 points. And the defense this year only gave up 17 points, more than 17 points 3 times. Texas's defense will absolutely smother Clemson. Clemson's not going to be able to score much. And I'm just going to assume that Texas will score plenty at home against a Clemson defense, which is okay. But I'm a little confused by this big time, Clemson sentiment. I don't know. I must be missing something. Texas lost to Georgia twice. Georgia has got the best coach in America in Kirby Smart, and Georgia always brings the defense hugely in big games. There's no shame in losing to Georgia, but all of a sudden it's like you think Clemson's in the same category with Georgia. In other words, Clemson can go into Austin and win. I don't think so. That's just me. What about tonight? What do you think about Indiana?
I think Notre Dame wins. I'd love, for the sake of Tom Ackerman, I'd love to see Indiana win. It's such a great story. This is one for me that I think the talent plays out, and I think there's more talent at Notre Dame than there is at Indiana, unfortunately.
I anticipate a low-scoring game for those that like to bet the under, the total on the line. Going to be in the 20s. It's going to be windy. Might be some snow. Both teams love to run the ball. Both teams are incredibly tough against the run. Both teams are very methodical in their pace. I have stats on that, which I won't give. It just seems like a slugfest type of game where the score is going to be kept down. To me, that gives Indiana a great chance to cover, even if Notre Dame wins. But really, I don't know. I think for those of you who are familiar with the over-under, this looks like an under game.
Fair enough. Well, that's going to do it for the show. And you take what Bernie just said to the bank, and we'll see what happens over the course of the next couple of days with the college football playoff. Bernie, have a wonderful final weekend before Christmas, and we'll see each other coming up next week.
On Monday, right? Looking forward to it.
All of us.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Have a beautiful weekend, everyone. Thanks for watching Gashouse, Gang.
That's Bernie Miklasz. I'm Matt Pauley. Have a wonderful weekend.